seawater? Look at this, dude. This is the most disgusting car I've ever touched. Something else really cool arrived today, the dry sump oil tank. We've been working with ARE since we built the Corvette, and Gary over there has taken care of me so much, and I was an absolute dummy when it came to dry sump systems at first. I had no idea how it was I mean, I knew what it did, but I didn't know anything more than that. So Gary kind of taught me how a dry sump system works, made some kind of custom stuff work on the C6 car because it being supercharged is not straightforward. And of course I was gonna get a system for the new car. So first things first, he sent a tank, and we're gonna be working on potentially having something super cool, which has a spin trick, which is a oil air separator in the tank. I run a spin trick on the race car, just sits off to the side, but he's working on something new that has it inside the tank. Really freaking cool. But right here, we have our mock-up tank. Don't scratch it. Alec, don't scratch it.
What?
What?
I would never do that.
Yeah, and this is cool. I haven't seen one of these tanks. This is, my other one is like a spun and hand fabricated. This is a cast end tanks on the top and the bottom. Super, super sick.
Scratch it.
Careful, careful, careful. Nice. Clamps. Dude, that is a freaking tank right there. And the cool thing about having the spin trick inside the tank is that it makes plumbing real easy. You basically get the oil out of the engine into the oil pump. From the oil pump, it's gonna send it to the tank. The tank is going to unaerate the oil, and out the bottom of the tank, you go right to the pump to give oil pressure to the engine. So it makes plumbing really, really easy. We gotta cover this thing up and move it around. The engine is out of the car. I mean, it was never really in, but it's out because we're gonna equip the mock-up engine with the dry sump pan, with the pump, set it back in there, and just kind of look and see what's going on. But let's get started. Oil literally from the pump will go to the tank. And because the air oil separator is inside, it'll go through the air oil separator, out the top of the tank, and then the nice unaerated oil will drip back down to the bottom of the tank and then be able to get sucked up by the oil pump. Pressure in, pressure out, go to the engine, do its thing. All of that in this little tank. And this is the new cast end tanks, spin trick with the ARE dry sump stuff. Oh, this thing's sweet. Oil pan. Got the 3 stages of scavenge here. Basically go to this pump, oil pressure in, so that's from the pump once you run it through their filter, which he gives a super sick spin trick oil filter, remote oil filter adapter. Such a nice one. Like, this is this race car stuff right here. Boom, belt goes on.
Ooh, that's tight.
Yeah, nice, right? That fits good. And then obviously the damper will drive it off. ATI damper for that, and all that will live right here. I think we have a really good place where the position of the can is gonna be. Right up in here. Dry sump tank will live here. We figured that we're gonna have to do kind of like a remote fill, so because the top of the tank is directly under this, so we're gonna do a remote fill with a dipstick, with a remote dipstick. That'll be really cool. But yeah, we kind of gotta equip the engine, put the oil pan on, put the oil pump on, and see how it all lays out. See about shimming it and getting it up in there, and then it'll be about mounting the tank kind of once we have it all figured out. But excited. Stuff's so nice. Gonna look inside. He couldn't resist. So the air comes out here. So oil comes in the bottom. Air comes out the very tippy top, like aerated oil. And then the unaerated oil comes out the side right here, goes down back into the pickup. That is so sick. Yep.
That's some nice stuff.
Next level. Air oil separator inside the dry sump tank. Brilliant. Sitting in the engine bay. This is where the dry sump tank is gonna go. It's on the passenger side, right behind the passenger seat. Just figuring out how to make the clamps go where they need to. We're gonna do something kind of interesting. This is normally for like the spin trick, the oil separator return here, but we're gonna use this to fill because the top of the can is so close. You can probably see up in here how close it actually is to the chassis. And that's the fill tank, or that's the fill, and that's underneath the firewall here. So if you see up top, it's literally underneath the firewall. So we're gonna do a remote fill with a cap and a dipstick. So that'll be a little bit of fab work. These two top fittings will go to the valve covers. And then we just have to figure out how to get a breather out of here to a catch can at some point. But now it's just about figuring out how to mount these things. Time to put the oil pan on. All right, let's get this oil pan on. The pump bracket that bolts to the block, and then the pump itself will bolt to this. Such a freaking sick piece. Pretty wild. This is the only thing that this thing's gonna have in the front. Dry sump pump on one side, alternator on the other. Alex over here making a bracket for the dry sump tank. Doing arts and crafts. Look at you.
So I think like that.
Yeah. Okay. So that's gonna hold the tank is gonna basically sit in this bracket, and we'll just run one clamp. Super similar to what we did in the C6, so we don't have two clamps. Easy to install. You just set the tank in it. Has a hole in the bottom so you can drain the oil out, and one clamp to the side. Cool. With that, pretty much set it in the back on here and see where this all lays out with the fittings and whatnot, but kind of good to put it back on here and get it back up in the car as soon as we mount the tank. Pretty interesting. The C8 is held together with so much of these, like, they're not self-tapping, like self-piloting screws, 6mm things, but I don't even know what this head is. No clue. We've just been using a regular like 12-point socket and kind of destroying it. I'm sure there's a proper socket for this. But this is where the dry sump tank bracket is going to go. I removed these two screws, and of course, you already know this car is going to have a ton of rib nuts, a ton. Holy moly! Rib nut, you already know. Boom, sick little bracket. Okay, hardware's mix match because that's already 5mm. I need longer throw rib nuts in there for that. Boom, boom. But yeah, that thing gets set right up on there. And then we just put the one clamp over there on the side. It'll wind up on the side there. Go ahead. Nice, makes it installing super easy. You just set it right on the bracket and good. Okay, hold the tank, let me go in there.
So we just need these little standoffs. So yeah. Should be cool.
Nice. I think I got some standoffs right here. Some mock-up standoffs. That is sick.
So we got some standoffs to get everything all squared up and it's rib nutted into the chassis. So it looks pretty good. So in addition to mounting up the dry sump tank, Matt has gotten a few more things put onto our mock-up block. We got the oil pump, alternator and bracket. Not sure if that's all going to be finalized, but it's looking pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and put this thing back into the car so that we can take a look and kind of plan out how we're going to plumb the oil lines, how it all fits together inside the bay.
The Transaxle that we have been kind of working on behind the scenes finally showed up. But this is just a mock-up case, so even cooler. We can kind of drag it around, throw it up and in. It's lightweight, it's not full of gears, it's the best. When we started thinking about this project, there was one huge question. What transmission and what differential were we gonna use? I know nothing about Transaxles. I'm a big, transmission and differential, like standard layout. Even though the Corvette is a Transaxle, it's still pretty standard gearbox and it's pretty standard Winters quick change rear end. So it was like, what are we gonna do with this? Who even makes what? What's gonna be able to withstand 1,000 horsepower clutch kicks? What is even gonna be able to withstand dumping the handbrake at 7,500 RPM? Like, what can handle that? And I cruised around, there's a bunch of different options out there, but we finally landed on this. And here, it's made in America. They've been doing stuff for a really long time, and it's for an off-road buggy, like an LS rear or mid-engine off-road buggy. And the guys told me, they're like, these guys are doing, you know, 700-800 horsepower, 37-inch tires, through the whoops, wide open, Baja 1000. Like, we should be good for what you're doing, Matt. I guess we'll see, but this is it right here. So this is a 5-speed sequential Weddle Transaxle gearbox and differential. It's similar to a Mendiola. A lot of you older guys might know what a Mendiola is, but it's a Weddle. So it's basically an updated, stronger, more features, more braces, better casting, updated Mendiola, and it is pretty freaking badass. The guys there have been excellent. They've been awesome to deal with. They give us the CAD for this so we can actually plug it in with an LS and set it in the back here, and Chris has kind of been going over what's possible and where it needs to go and how it's going to be mounted, because this is all new, where it mounts. All this is just new things to us. And actually it's sitting upside down right now. So this is the direction it's going to be sitting. And a big thing about why we went with this transaxle as well is because where the output of the CVs are. So there's a couple of requirements when I started digging into this project before I even bought the car. I noticed that the input shaft has to be below the center line of the CVs. Very important. That's just due to it being in a car. And the reason why Weddle is so awesome is because you can have it in any configuration. You can have the input above or below. Like above would be better for more ground clearance in like an off-road car. We need it this direction. And also having the ability to have a very small distance from the center line of the CV to the back of the block. And because if you look at a C8 gearbox, because the architecture of an LT and an LS, almost the same thing. But this distance is very, very close on a C8 transmission. So this is even a little bit longer, but we're able to compensate with moving the engine a little bit further forward because we don't have all the stuff, the accessories on the front. But it's definitely kind of a crazy thing to look at this. And this is actually a Volkswagen bell housing with an adapter to go to an LS. CVs are where they need to be, above the center line. There's a lot of transmission out there in the back to fit in this, but in theory, it should all fit. It really should. But we don't know exactly because we didn't have everything. So we're kind of at the point where we have our mock-up transaxle. The mock-up block with the oil pan and the dry sump stuff is all sitting in there. So it kind of is where it needs to be, but now we need to attach this to the block and just look and see what fits, and then communicate our needs and what we see and what needs trimming to Chris, and then Chris will put it in CAD, we'll make the adjustments, and hopefully get some engine and transmission mounts here pretty soon. But yeah, let's put it in. Let's see what it got. Filing the dowel pin so it slides in a little easier. It was a little tight. Just taking the corner off. Nice hole action, dude. This way is a little bit easier, and we just cleaned up the holes a little bit, but man, the adapter literally fits perfect on the back of the dowel pins, like spot on. Also, this is an aftermarket block, not a GM block, so you gotta consider all those things, but we're gonna bolt the adapter on first and then slide the transaxle onto that. And I think that's probably how it's intended, because it has the bolts, and this is basically would just bolt to the back of a Volkswagen engine. So I assume that's on and off nice and easy with the 4 studs. Look at this muscle hut over here, dude. Muscle hut. All right, she's in, just got to position it all up. So that's obviously not how it's gonna sit. So Chris told us that we needed a 10mm shim underneath here. That will help set the transmission height. And then we just gotta get it as far forward until the center line of the CVs is about where it needs to be. Okay, you gotta go up with the jack.
Off with the jack.
Forward. Transaxle is basically where it's going to be sitting. Got a little 10 mil-ish spacer underneath here, like Chris said. Checking the center line of the CVs. Checking the angle. It is backwards some. That's the angle right there. It's not super bad. Not super bad at all. And we can go forward, but this right here. So if we want to go forward, we just need to grind into the cross member right there, which wouldn't be a big deal, but I don't know. It's also pretty good. What a freaking unit.